What is going on to all my movie fans out there, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Today we are discussing a new historical action film that actually debuted at the Midnight Madness section of the Toronto Film Festival last September, and will be making its way out to the US markets come the end of April. We're talking about Sisu, a film I got a chance to check out early, courtesy of Lionsgate. Now, the buzz and the word on the street in the film festival was this is a John Wick meets Mad Max Fury Road type of film. Now, those are films that I love and I adore. So does this film deserve to be in that conversation? Is it worth checking out? We'll be discussing that and much more in today's spoiler-free review. But first, let me know if you all have heard of this film and if you were excited about it in the comments section. Of course, once you all have seen it, let me know your thoughts on the direction, the story, the performances, the action in this film. What were some things you loved? What were some things you didn't like about this movie? Let's talk about it in the comments below. And of course, if you all appreciate today's spoiler-free review, consider hitting the like button, sharing today's review, and consider subscribing to the channel. So again, I had heard some of the words coming out of Toronto Film Festival, but then when I saw the trailer a couple months back on YouTube, I saw the first 20-25 seconds and I said, yep, I don't need to see any more. I'm sold. I need to see this film. And listen, I will say, as comparing it to those films I mentioned up top, John Wick, Mad Max Fury Road, yes, it has some similarities. And I'll also throw in the approach to the filmmaking, the approach to the story has a Quentin Tarantino-esque Inglourious Basterds grindhouse vibe to it, with the John Wick isms, with this character being very much like John Wick with the will and the determination and being unkillable. In the Mad Max Fury Road vibe to it, I would say in comparison, the way that it tells a story and how it's constantly moving, it has some similar vibes. Now, it doesn't quite hit those notes of those great films, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but I will say the action in this film is definitely in comparison to those movies, because the action in this movie, the approach to the action is just phenomenal. I mean, it is not only creative and entertaining, but it is also extremely violent and very brutal. Again, I'm going to leave the trailer to this movie in the description of this video, so check it out. Don't watch the whole thing because it does give away some of the more exciting, surprising beats of the film, but just watch the first 30 seconds. And if you are into that type of action, that's only the tip of the iceberg, because again, the thing that I really appreciate about this action, because I've seen my fair share of action movies, and there are plenty of those movies that give you the incredible action. It is big, it is bombastic within the first action set piece, but then as the film goes along, it never manages to meet the action set piece from the beginning. So this film is saying constantly to the audience, wait a minute, hold my beer. You think that was cool? You think that was brutal? You think that was violent? Wait till you see this next action set piece. So I do enjoy how it was able to one-up itself as the film goes along. And listen, grindhouse, throwback 80s action film, this B-level action film, it definitely hits those beats. So I definitely do appreciate those moments. But pivoting over to some of the performances, while none of them really blew me away per se or really kind of broke new ground, I will say our main character, who is this kind of mythical figure who has this history of being unkillable like a John Wick, while he doesn't have a lot of dialogue in this film besides a couple grunts and moans and a couple lines here and there, it's more in the physicality from the main actor, as well as there's some nuance going on in the facial impressions, and also you have to have an actor that's very believable and capable of doing the things that the character does in this film. So I do appreciate the nuance that we get in the very subtle performance from our main character. But also, I am a fan of great production. This movie is like on a $6 million budget, and the scope and the scale and the creativity behind the lens was something I really appreciated, because with this movie, we are following this gold miner who comes across gold. He has to travel hundreds of miles to cash this in. He comes across these Nazis. They steal his gold, and it's a very simple premise, but the groundedness in that it takes place in Finland, 1944, the back half of World War II, the grittiness, the visceralness, the disgusting nature of these Nazis, they really captured that groundedness really well in this movie. So those are some things that I really appreciate about this film, but it is by no means a perfect movie, and I'll just say this. I did match it and compare it to, again, very similar to a Quentin Tarantino-esque grindhouse, Inglourious Basterds, Mad Max Fury Road, John Wick. The action can definitely be in the conversation, The story, not so much, right? Those movies that I just mentioned, the world building, the character development, the compelling nature to those stories, this film is not here for story, y'all. Again, I appreciate the simplicity of this film, but at the same time, it is almost too simple of a film to really kind of keep me engaged with the main narrative. Again, it's a simple A to B plot, but there's not a lot of meat on the bone, as well as there's not any to no character development in this film. Our character starts off at one point and he ends in the exact same way, and all the other characters around him aren't really doing that much. There is a subplot involving these women that are captured and kidnapped that has a little bit of a payoff, but I wish we would have spent a little bit more time on the humanness of that particular story, mixing it into our main character's revenge story. So I wish that there was more compelling engagement narrative to this film and also some more character development. So that's really my biggest gripe with this film. It takes it down a couple knocks, but I will say, kind of pivoting over to some nitpicks, while I am a fan of 80s kind of campy, over-the-top action movies, there is a threshold when you can kind of turn off the brain and suspend disbelief. But once you get past that threshold, it kind of takes me out of the film, especially tonally speaking, where again, there is some groundedness, some reality to the situation at hand, but then we have, within seconds or minutes later, we get to this over-the-topness of the character surviving in ways that you would just be like, what? How did this... If there was no, and you'll know what I'm talking about when you see the film, when the character finds itself in a really interesting situation, if there was no needles or nails in that pose, there's no way the character survived. And so there are moments where I'm just like, it kind of takes me out of the grittiness of the story that they were trying to tell. So that's more of a nitpick. My biggest issue was really no story and really no character development. But besides that, y'all, before I give you all my score and if this film is worth checking out, if you stuck around to this point in the review, I really appreciate you. Just a reminder to hit the like button if you're enjoying yourself, share today's review, and consider subscribing to the channel. Overall, I would definitely say this was a callback to those grindhouse 80s action films that can be over the top and a little bit unbelievable at points, but at the end of the day, it was super creative, very violent, and I was here for all the action. Now, while yes, the story wasn't that great and there's really no character development at all, I lean more on the positives of this film, so I'm going to give it a 3.8 out of 5. It would have got to that 4.5, but again, the story wasn't there and there was no character development. I wish the characters would have interacted more. I'm referring to our main character and the women on the bus, but overall, y'all, I had a good time with this film, and I would say if you have the opportunity to see it, come April 28th, give it a chance. This is the quintessential Saturday afternoon, Sunday, Tuesday matinee film that I think you all will enjoy in the theater. And if you don't get the chance to see it in theater, when it is available to rent or stream, definitely give it a watch. And when you do, let me know in the comments what you all thought, your pros, your cons, what worked, what didn't work, and what were some of your favorite elements about this film. Thank you all for watching today's review. Like I said a minute ago, if you enjoyed yourself, consider hitting the like button, sharing the review, leaving your thoughts in the comments, and of course, as you can see on the screen now, consider subscribing and joining the community. Check out my other reviews so far from this year. Check out my most recent review, and we'll catch you all on the next video.